Do you feel like SSRIs are overprescribed? There's a lot of especially in LA. There's a lot of people who like, oh, you should just exercise and diet and get good sleep and you know go out to nature and stuff like that, and then see how you feel before putting drugs in your body.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts?
So a
on
lot of people, hundreds of millions of people have died because of that, of course, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, of course.
there are certain infectious diseases that are, if you don't take certain antibiotics,
I'm
you're
not talking
going to
about
die.
Antibiotics.
But I mean,
antidepressants.
So,
specifically.
that's okay. So in our studies with depression and suicide and even personality disorders, which are the hardest to treat, I mean, they're almost impervious to it. But in those cases, that's what we were looking for by looking to see what biomarkers you could find genetically in terms of brain imaging, different parts of the brain which are activated, to then say, okay, you're one of these 10 types of people who you have depression, but you're going to respond to blue light therapy. Don't take any drugs. Don't talk to anybody. Go out at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning and sit in the in the light.
Does that actually help you?
Yeah. So there's a certain fraction of people that cures their depression.
Wow.
Okay. So there's those people. Then there's another group. There's a subgroup, and we've done these studies. I mean, another subgroup where sleep deprivation will cure their depression for a week. No drugs, but what they do is you stay up for 24 to 48 hours, and they feel great.
What?
Yeah, but that's only like 10% of people. 50.
Can you, for a person who's much more scientifically literate, is there a way to explain how sleep deprivation can potentially help depression?
Yeah, there are. If you and I can show you a circuit diagram. There's never an easy answer.
I gotcha.
It's but because most people think if you have a problem, you just you hit this spot. And usually this spot is inhibited by another spot, which is inhibited by another spot. So you have to block the first spot to release the second spot to release it. So it's kind of the inhibition of the inhibition of the inhibition. So there's all of these switches. So the way the body, and especially the brain, is set up is with these multiple on-off switches that are intuitively don't make sense.
Yeah.
And I had this genius kid. He was the youngest kid ever to go to college. He worked in my lab. They brought him to my lab because I get along with kids. I got kids and grandkids and love kids. So, and I drew a circuit diagram of a really complex part of the brain having to do with movement disorders. And I drew it. He was like 11 years old. And I explained it, all these positive and negative switches. And he looked at this whole Jackson Pollock drawing. Yeah. And he goes, wait a second. There's a negative. There's an inhibition missing, and I looked up, and he had it right.
Wow.
There are some people that just get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. But so at any rate, if you look at for depression, and especially bipolar, there's bipolar, and then there's major depression. These are different things.
Okay.
And that in bipolar, there's a rhythmicity to it. And some people have a highly rhythmic thing. Sometimes it varies by season, circannual. Where they're not getting enough sun in the wintertime and they have seasonal affective disorder. That's a type.
Right.
That's a rhythmic thing. It has to do with the sun rhythm. And then there are ones that are almost tidal, which are, it's like in the sea. There's a lot of these things are called circumsesidual. Circumsesidual are every 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And part of psychopathy, we looked, we didn't do this study, but it was done up at USC. Psychopathy, murdering sprees, murder cycles, or rape cycles. Different people have these different needs, and it's 2 weeks, a month, so it's rhythmic. And so there's a lot of these rhythmic sorts of behavioral manifestations. And so with bipolar, a lot of it's cyclic. So there's a daily cyclicity. Some people are very fast cyclers.
Yeah.
In the morning, and then at night they're up and down all over the place. And some are by the lunar cycles, which can be hormonal. But so there's all these different types. And there are rhythm makers in the brain. There's a primary oscillator, primary timekeeper. It's called in the hypothalamus, it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. But there's secondary slave oscillators. And these connect up with parts of the brain that control depression. Mm-hmm. So there's a part of the brain with the wonderful name of Area 25.
Yeah.
Okay, it's Area 25 is if you stick your finger right here, point here, and then right here, and triangulate that. So you put where those come together is area 25, a little piece of brain tissue. It's part of the frontal lobe, but a part of the emotional limbic system of nearly along the midline. Well, it turns out if you stimulate that, people become instantly depressed, like devastatingly depressed. If you burn it out, and it's done now, deep brain stimulation or lesioning by overstimulating it, people will get up off the operating table and feel like they're a completely new life. They said, this is what life is about. That's with one little nucleus of the brain. And so some people with intractable sorts of drug-resistant, blue light resistant, sleep deprivation resistant, various drugs, only respond to overstimulating this area 25 in the brain, and they feel great. And they can't even believe it, instantaneously.
Do most people get to have all those options, though, when they
No. And, they don't, and a lot of people will do it. There are people, and the last, for our group, and for many groups now, the last option is surgery, and then before that, drugs, because if you can avoid drugs, you avoid drugs. So you have to work with a group, and it's usually a university group that maybe not married to a technique. Because if you got to support your own clinic, you have to have a technique that you charge a lot of money for. And so you tend to oversubscribe the drugs that they have a contract for, or oversubscribe surgery because they make money at surgery. And so that's how they stay afloat. If they don't have that, they close down. And so the groups, usually university groups, that study it for just what it is. I mean, none of the people in our group is in for the money at all. It's like, and I have no problem with money, but it's just not what we do, right? Because we have, government grants and also biotech grants, a mix of those, do clinical trials on this. And so we're just looking for what works and what doesn't work. And so, but for our hierarchy, last thing surgery, then drugs. And what you want is to get down to something very simple, right? And so there is this deep brain stimulation for a lot of things now. For epilepsy, you stimulate part of the, right here, you put a little hook in the vagus nerve. Or for, even for Parkinson's. So there are all these ways that the peripheral autonomic nervous system, sympathetic or parasympathetic nerves that run in the neck, stimulate them with a certain frequency that then stimulates a brain nucleus, which then turns on areas of the brain. And that's how you train. So some people will respond to that. So it's finding out what's right for this particular person.